The vast darkness of space enveloped Erebus 9, the research station, that hung in orbit around the barren planet Saren, like a gleaming sentinel. Through the observation deck's panoramic window, Saren's rusty surface revealed itself scarred by ancient impact craters and dust storms that had been raging for centuries. The station, a joint initiative between the fragile peace of the Light Alliance and the Steel Empire, served as more than just a scientific outpost. It was a symbol of cooperation in a galaxy torn by decades of Cold War and suspicion. Dr. Kara Voss stood at her console shoulders, hunched forward, as her fingers danced across the holographic interface. Streaks of colorful data cascaded over her features, casting her already pale skin in an ethereal glow. As the station's lead hyperspace signal interpreter, she had spent the last 3 years of her life decoding the mysterious patterns that occasionally filtered through from the depths of uncharted space. Most were merely cosmic noise, the afterbirth of dying stars, or the gentle whispers of black holes consuming matter at the edges of the galaxy. But Kara lived for the anomalies, those impossibly ordered sequences that suggested intelligence beyond current understanding. Still chasing ghosts, Voss. The voice behind her belonged to Lieutenant Marlo Jung, the station's veteran pilot and head of security. His stocky frame filled the doorway as he leaned against it, arms crossed over his chest. The emblem of the Light Alliance glinted on his uniform, though the insignia was worn, a testament to his years of service. Not ghosts, Kara corrected, without turning away from her screen. Patterns. Everything in the universe speaks, Lieutenant. It's just a matter of learning the language. Marlo shook his head, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The commander wants your weekly report. We've got representatives from both the Alliance and the Empire arriving for inspection in 48 hours, and they'll want results. Tell her I'll have it ready. Kara swiped away a cluster of data points, replacing them with new ones. I've detected something unusual in the last few transmissions. A repeating sequence that doesn't match any known cosmic phenomena. You say that every week, Marlo replied, his tone gentler than his words. And every week it turns out to be a pulsar or some other perfectly explainable astronomical event. Kara finally turned to face him, her eyes reflecting both irritation and a hint of doubt. In the harsh lighting of the research lab, the shadows under her eyes stood out prominently. Sleep had become a luxury she could rarely afford, especially now, with the political pressure mounting. The year 2387 marked a decade of tentative peace between the two greatest powers in the galaxy, but everyone aboard Erebus 9 felt the underlying current of tension. Peace treaties were only as strong as the parties' willingness to uphold them. This is different, she insisted. There's a mathematical precision to it that defies natural origin. I just need more time to isolate it from the background noise. Marlo uncrossed his arms and stepped further into the lab. Time is the one thing we don't have, Doctor. The Steel Empire has been flexing its military muscles along the border sectors. The commander thinks they might be preparing to claim Saren and this entire system. Saren is a dead world, Kara scoffed. What possible strategic value could it have? Location, Marlo replied simply. It sits at the crossroads of 3 major hyperspace lanes. Whoever controls Saren controls trade and troop movements across a quarter of the galaxy. He paused, glancing at her screens. Besides, rumor has it they think we found something here. Something worth fighting for. Kara's breath caught in her throat. Had her transmissions been monitored? Had she inadvertently alerted someone to the anomalies she'd been tracking? Before she could inquire further, the lab's emergency lighting activated, bathing the room in pulsating red. Warning. The station's AI announced, its feminine voice eerily calm, despite the urgency of the situation. Unknown signal detected. Hyperspace disturbance approaching. All personnel to secure stations. Kara's hands flew across her console, pulling up real-time sensor data as Marlo rushed to the lab's communication panel. Zhang to command, what's happening? The commander's voice came through tense and clipped. We're picking up an unusual signal. It's bypassing our communication protocols, going straight into our systems. Kara felt her heart race as she watched her screen. There it was, the pattern she'd been chasing for weeks, suddenly amplified 1,000-fold. It wasn't just a signal anymore. It was a beacon, a screaming lighthouse cutting through the void of space. Lines of code scrolled across her screen faster than she could read them, a language both familiar and alien. "It's overriding our security systems," she shouted, fingers desperately, trying to erect digital barriers. "I can't block it." The lights throughout the lab flickered, then died completely, plunging them into darkness, before the backup systems kicked in. The hum of the station's engines changed pitch, dropping to a low, ominous drone. "Zhang, get back to command." The commander's voice was nearly drowned out by alarms. "All the docking protocols are being activated. Something's coming." Marlowe was already moving, but he paused at the doorway. "Voss, come with me. This isn't safe." Kara shook her head, her attention fixed on the console, where the ghost transmission continued to pour in. "I need to understand this. It could be the key to stopping whatever's happening." For a moment, Marlowe looked as though he might argue, but another alarm sounded, and he disappeared through the door, leaving Kara alone with the pulsing data stream. As the station shuddered around her, Kara felt a strange sense of vindication mixed with terror. She had been right. There was something out there, something intelligent enough to breach their most sophisticated defenses. But, as she watched the station's docking beacons activate of their own accord, guiding an unseen vessel toward them, she wondered if this discovery might be her last. Through the observation window, she could see it now, a ship unlike any she had ever encountered. Ancient, its hull covered in scars and symbols that seemed to shift and change as she watched. It moved with impossible grace, defying the laws of physics as it approached the station's main docking bay. "I found you," she whispered to the empty lab. "But I think you were looking for us all along." The ghost transmission flickered across her screen one more time before the entire system went dark. The emergency lighting cast long shadows through the corridors of Erebus 9 as Kara made her way toward the main docking bay. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated with each step, making her feel alternately weightless and leaden. Around her, the scientific crew rushed to secure sensitive equipment and data, their faces masks of controlled panic. Commander Elisa Thorne stood at the docking bay control center, her tall frame rigid with tension as she observed the incoming vessel through the reinforced viewport. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a tight bun, enhancing the severity of her expression. When she noticed Kara approaching, her eyes narrowed. "Dr. Voss explained to me why an unidentified ship has just bypassed every security protocol we have and is currently docking with my station." "I can't," Kara admitted, moving to stand beside the commander. "But the signal pattern matches the anomalies I've been tracking for weeks. It's as if it knew exactly how to communicate with our systems." Lieutenant Zhang joined them, his hand resting on the sidearm, holstered at his hip. "Docking sequence complete," he reported. "The vessel has established a hard seal with Airlock 7, but there's no response to our communications." "Life signs?" Commander Thorne asked. "None that our sensors can detect," Zhang replied. "But the ship's configuration is interfering with our scans. It's like looking through static." Commander Thorne considered this information, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I want a security team at that airlock. No one goes aboard that vessel until we know what we're dealing with." "With all due respect, Commander," Kara interjected, "this could be the first contact with an unknown civilization. We need to approach this scientifically, not militarily." "This unknown civilization just hijacked my station, Doctor," Thorne responded coldly. "Until I know their intentions, I'm treating this as a potential hostile action." She turned to Zhang. "Assemble your team. Full containment protocols." Kara felt a surge of frustration. "At least let me accompany them. If there's any attempt at communication, you'll need an interpreter." Commander Thorne studied her for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. "Stay behind the security team. Any sign of trouble, you pull back immediately." "Understood." "Understood." Kara agreed, though her mind was already racing ahead, imagining the possibilities that waited beyond that airlock. 20 minutes later, she stood beside Lieutenant Zhang and 3 security officers outside Airlock 7. They were all dressed in environmental suits, a precaution against potential biological hazards. Kara's heart thundered in her chest as the outer door cycled open, revealing the connecting tunnel to the mysterious vessel. "Stay behind me," Zhang reminded her, his voice tinny through the suit's communication system. "Touch nothing without authorization." The team moved forward slowly, their helmet lights cutting through the darkness of the tunnel. As they approached the ship's entrance, Kara could see intricate patterns etched into the metal mathematical sequences, astronomical charts, symbols that seemed to shimmer and change as their lights passed over them. "It's beautiful," she whispered mostly to herself. The ship's airlock opened without resistance, almost as if it had been waiting for them. Beyond lay a curved corridor, its walls lined with the same shifting symbols. The air inside was breathable according to their sensors, though stale as if it had been circulating for centuries. "Proceed with caution," Zhang ordered, as they stepped inside. The ship's interior was surprisingly spacious, the architecture flowing in organic curves, rather than the angular efficiency of human vessels. Their footsteps echoed against the metal floor, the only sound in the eerily silent ship. They made their way toward what appeared to be the bridge, a circular chamber dominated by a massive crystalline structure at its center. Workstations surrounded it, their surfaces covered in controls, unlike any human design. Everything was powered down, the only light coming from their suits. "No crew," one of the security officers observed, sweeping his light across the empty chairs. "They could be in stasis somewhere else on the ship," another suggested. Kara approached one of the workstations, her suited fingers hovering over the dormant controls. "This technology, it's centuries beyond anything we have. The Light Alliance, the Steel Empire, none of our scientists have even theorized something like this." "Don't touch anything," Zhang reminded her sharply. "I'm not," she assured him, though the temptation was almost overwhelming. Her attention was drawn to a small, cube-like device resting on the main console. Unlike the rest of the ship, it seemed to pulse with a faint internal light. "Look at this." Before Zhang could stop her, Kara had moved closer to examine the cube. As her helmet light fell upon it, the object responded, its surface illuminating with the same patterns she had observed in the ghost transmission. "Step back, Doctor," Zhang ordered, raising his weapon. But it was too late. The cube projected a holographic display into the air above it, a star map, galaxies spiraling across the bridge. Red lines appeared connecting various star systems in a web-like pattern. And at each intersection, a symbol pulsed, a circle with a line drawn through it. The universal symbol for negation, for extinction. "What are we looking at?" Zhang demanded. Kara's scientific mind raced to interpret the display. "It's a map of weapon deployments, I think. Look at the star systems being highlighted, their strategic locations throughout both Alliance and Empire territory." Her voice grew hushed with realization. "This is a plan for simultaneous strikes against both powers." "Who would benefit from that?" one of the officers asked. "Who has the capability?" "I don't think this is about current politics," Kara replied slowly, her eyes tracking the pulsing symbols. "This data, it's old. Very old, judging by the stellar positions." She pointed to one section of the map. "That star went supernova over 300 years ago, but it's still shown as active here." Zhang looked at her sharply. "You're saying this is some kind of ancient battle plan?" "Or a warning," Kara suggested. "A record of what happened before, preserved as a caution." She reached toward the cube, her scientific curiosity overriding Zhang's earlier warning. "Doctor, don't," he began, but Kara had already touched the surface of the cube. The holographic display shifted instantly, expanding to fill the entire bridge. The star map vanished, replaced by lines of code, the same code that had overridden Erebus 9 systems. Below it, a simulation began to play out, a small device, similar to the cube itself, activating near a star. The star's natural fusion reaction altered, accelerated, then collapsed in on itself before exploding with far greater force than a normal supernova. The shockwave expanded outward, engulfing nearby star systems, in a chain reaction of destruction. "It's a weapon," Kara breathed, horrified understanding dawning on her face. "A weapon that uses stars themselves as the delivery mechanism. One activation could destroy entire regions of space." Zhang stared at the simulation as it repeated his expression, hidden behind his helmet visor. "We need to report this to Command immediately. This technology can't fall into the hands of either the Alliance or the Empire." Kara nodded numbly, her eyes still fixed on the horrific beauty of the simulated destruction. As the security team turned to leave, she quickly accessed her suit's data storage, copying as much information from the cube as she could. Knowledge, even terrible knowledge, needed to be preserved. Understood. As they exited the alien vessel, none of them noticed the faint signal that pulsed outward from the ship, broadcasting their discovery to the stars. Back on Erebus 9, the mood in the command center was tense as Kara and Zhang delivered their report. Commander Thorne listened in grim silence, her expression growing darker with each detail. "Let me understand this correctly," she said, when they had finished. "This ship contains schematics for a weapon capable of destabilizing stars and triggering artificial supernovae. A weapon that could theoretically destroy both the Light Alliance and the Steel Empire simultaneously." "Yes," Kara confirmed. "But the technology is ancient. The ship itself appears to be hundreds, possibly thousands of years old. Whoever created this weapon is likely long gone." "That doesn't make the danger any less real," Zhang pointed out. "If this technology could be adapted to current scientific understanding, then whoever controls it would have absolute power," Commander Thorne finished for him. "We need to contact Alliance headquarters immediately. This vessel needs to be secured and studied under the most stringent protocols." Kara felt a flutter of unease. "Commander, I don't think we should be studying this at all. The moral implications alone are not your concern," Dr. Thorne interrupted sharply. "Your job is to understand the science, not dictate policy." She turned to her communications officer. "Establish a secure channel to Alliance Command. Priority Alpha." As the officer hurried to comply, Thorne lowered her voice, addressing only Kara and Zhang. "This discovery doesn't leave this room. Not a word to anyone, especially not to any Empire personnel on station." Zhang nodded his understanding, but Kara couldn't bring herself to do the same. "Commander, this weapon poses an equal threat to both the Alliance and the Empire. Shouldn't we be sharing this information, working together to ensure it's never used?" Thorne's laugh was short and bitter. "Your naivety would be charming if it weren't so dangerous, Doctor. The Steel Empire would weaponize this technology the moment they understood its potential. Our only hope is to secure it first and make sure they never get the chance." Kara opened her mouth to protest further, but Zhang placed a warning hand on her arm. His eyes conveyed a clear message: not now. The communications officer turned from his console, his face pale. "Commander, I can't establish a connection with Alliance Command. All channels are being jammed." "Jammed?" Thorne's expression hardened. "By whom?" "Unknown, ma'am. But I'm also picking up approaching vessels. At least 3 on an intercept course with the station." "Identification?" The officer swallowed hard. "Steel Empire warships, ma'am. They'll be within firing range in less than 2 hours." A heavy silence fell over the command center. The fragile peace between the two powers had been maintaining for a decade was about to shatter, and Erebus 9 was at the epicenter of the breaking point. "They must have detected the ghost transmission," Kara realized aloud. "That's why they're coming." "Or they've had spies on this station all along," Thorne countered grimly. "Either way, we're out of time." She straightened, years of military training evident in her posture. "Lieutenant Zhang, prepare a defense team. Dr. Voss, I want you back on that alien vessel. Download everything you can from its database: weapons, schematics, historical records, anything that might give us an advantage. "Commander, I must protest," Kara began. "If we use this technology, we maintain the balance of power." Thorne cut her off. "That's all that's kept the peace these 10 years, Doctor. Not goodwill, not diplomacy, the knowledge that mutual destruction would be assured if either side attacked. If the Empire gets this weapon first, there will be no more Light Alliance. No more freedom, no more scientific inquiry. Just subjugation under their boot." Kara looked to Zhang for support, but his expression was unreadable. As a military officer, his loyalty to the Alliance was absolute. As a soldier who had seen the horrors of the last conflict, however, he understood the devastating implications of escalation. "Go, Doctor," he said quietly. "Learn what you can. Knowledge itself isn't evil, only how it's used." With reluctance weighing her steps, Kara left the command center, her mind a storm of conflicting duties. As a scientist, her obligation was to truth and understanding. As a human being, she feared what that understanding might unleash. The ghost transmission had found them just as she had found it. Now she wondered if either discovery had been a blessing or the beginning of the end. As Kara made her way back to the alien vessel, the corridors of Erebus 9 buzzed with controlled chaos. Scientific personnel hurriedly backed up research data, while security officers distributed weapons and established defensive positions. The approaching Steel Empire warships had transformed the research station into a military installation overnight. Inside the alien ship, the atmosphere remained eerily still, a stark contrast to the frantic activity outside. Kara moved directly to the bridge, where the crystalline structure at its center now pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light. The cube she had activated earlier hovered slightly above the console, rotating slowly. "You've been busy," she murmured to the empty ship as she approached the cube. Without the bulky environmental suit this time, she could examine the technology more closely. The cube's surface was smooth to the touch, yet contained incredible depth, as if she were looking into layers of liquid crystal. She connected her datapad to the cube, initiating a download protocol she had designed specifically for unknown technology. As information began to flow into her device, she explored the bridge more thoroughly, searching for any clue about the vessel's origins or its mysterious crew. A soft chime from her datapad alerted her that the download was complete far more quickly than she had anticipated. When she checked the received files, her eyes widened. The cube hadn't just transferred the weapon schematics she'd been sent to retrieve. It had provided a comprehensive history of its creators, their technology, and their ultimate fate. They called themselves the Precursors, an ancient species that had achieved interstellar travel millennia, before humans had even learned to make fire. They had built a vast empire spanning thousands of star systems, governed through a complex network of automated outposts and self-replicating machines. Their technological prowess had been unmatched, allowing them to harness the energy of stars and bend the fabric of spacetime to their will. But their advancement had come at a terrible cost. In their quest for ever greater power, they had developed the Stellar Destabilizer, the weapon whose schematics had so alarmed Commander Thorne. Designed as a deterrent against potential rivals, the weapon had functioned exactly as intended, until it didn't. A faction within their own civilization had gained control of the technology, attempting to use it to consolidate power. The resulting conflict had triggered a chain reaction of stellar collapses, decimating entire regions of their empire. What the weapon's creators hadn't foreseen was the cascade effect, how the disruption of one star's gravitational field would affect neighboring systems, creating a domino effect of destruction. The ship Kara now stood within was one of many sent out as warnings to other intelligent species that might one day discover the same technology. Each carried a record of the Precursors' achievements and their ultimate downfall, a testament to the dangers of unchecked technological advancement. "My God," Kara whispered, as she absorbed the implications. The Precursors' empire had been far more advanced than either the Light Alliance or the Steel Empire, yet they had been unable to control the weapon they had created. What chance did humanity have? Her datapad chimed again, this time with an incoming communication from Lieutenant Zhang. Dr. Voss, report to command immediately. The situation has escalated. Upon returning to the command center, Kara found it transformed. Tactical displays had replaced scientific readouts, and armed officers stood at every entrance. Commander Thorne was engaged in a heated exchange with a holographic projection, an official-looking woman in the crisp uniform of Alliance Command. Not open to negotiation. Commander. The woman was saying, her voice clipped and authoritative. You are ordered to secure the alien technology and prepare it for immediate transport to Alliance headquarters. A battle group is en route to intercept the Empire vessels. Admiral, with respect, bringing a battle group into this sector will only provoke a full-scale conflict, Thorne argued. If you'll allow me more time. Your time has run out. The Admiral cut her off. The Steel Empire has already violated the treaty by sending warships into neutral territory. We must respond with appropriate force. Kara stepped forward, unable to contain herself any longer. Admiral, the technology aboard the alien vessel could destroy both the Alliance and the Empire. No one should possess it. The hologram turned toward her, eyes narrowing. And you are? Dr. Kara Voss, Chief Hyperspace Signal Interpreter. I've studied the alien database, and I believe this weapon is what led to the extinction of an entire civilization far more advanced than our own. Your concern is noted, Doctor, the Admiral said dismissively. But the decision has been made. The Steel Empire cannot be allowed to acquire this technology. Neither can we, Kara insisted. Don't you understand? This isn't about maintaining a balance of power. This weapon disrupts the fundamental forces that hold stars together. There's no controlling it, no safe deployment. The precursors tried and destroyed themselves in the process. The Admiral's expression hardened. Commander Thorne, control your scientist. Prepare the technology for transport, and send me all the data you've gathered. That's an order. The hologram flickered once, before disappearing entirely. An uncomfortable silence fell over the command center. Commander Thorne's face was a mask of conflicting emotions, loyalty to her superiors, warring with the scientist's caution that had been ingrained during her years overseeing Erebus 9. You heard the Admiral, she said finally. Lieutenant Zhang, assemble a team to secure the alien vessel. Dr. Voss, prepare all your data for transmission to Alliance headquarters. Commander, please, Kara pleaded. If you've read my report, you know what happened to the precursors. Are we doomed to repeat their mistakes? Thorne's eyes flashed with momentary doubt before hardening once more. What would you have me do, Doctor? Disobey a direct order. Allow the Empire to claim the weapon instead. The decision isn't ours to make. It is if we destroy it, Kara countered, her voice barely above a whisper. The command center went absolutely still. Even the background hum of equipment seemed to fade as all eyes turned to Kara. That would be treason, Thorne said softly, yet her tone lacked conviction. It would be salvation, Kara replied, for everyone, Alliance and Empire alike. Lieutenant Zhang, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. How would we even do it? That ship's hull is made of material we can't analyze, let alone destroy. Kara turned to him, a plan already forming in her mind. We don't need to destroy the ship, just the data it contains. The cube on the bridge is the central repository. If we could overload it somehow. Enough! Commander Thorne interrupted, her voice regaining its authority. This discussion is over. We have our orders, and we will follow them. Dr. Voss, you are relieved of your duties. Lieutenant Zhang, escort her to her quarters and ensure she remains there. Zhang hesitated only briefly before nodding. Yes, Commander. As he led Kara from the command center, his hand firmly on her arm, the station's alarms began to sound again. The communications officer's voice rose in panic. Commander, Empire vessels have accelerated. They'll be within firing range in 20 minutes. And there's something else. We're detecting another ship approaching from the opposite vector. It's Alliance Special Forces. Thorne's curse was lost as the doors slid closed behind Kara and Zhang. They walked in tense silence through the corridors, the emergency lighting casting everything in an ominous red glow. "You know I'm right," Kara said, finally keeping her voice low. "This technology can't be controlled by either side." Zhang's grip on her arm tightened momentarily, before relaxing. "What I know is that we're about to be caught in the crossfire of two empires, neither of which will hesitate to sacrifice this station and everyone on it to secure that weapon." "Then help me stop it," Kara urged. "You've seen the data. You know what happened to the precursors." Zhang pulled her into an empty research lab, checking quickly to ensure they were alone before releasing her arm. "What exactly are you proposing, Doctor?" "The ghost transmission is still active," Kara explained, moving to a console and bringing up her research data. "It's how the ship communicates with our systems, how it activated the docking protocols. If I can decode it completely, reverse engineer it." "You could send a shutdown command to the cube." Zhang finished, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Precisely. But I'd need direct access to the main communication array, and with Alliance Special Forces inbound." She left the implication hanging. Zhang ran a hand through his short hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty from the usually composed officer. "This is more than our careers, Doctor. If we're wrong, if either the Alliance or the Empire could actually control this weapon, we'd be dooming our side to defeat." "And if we're right, if neither side can control it," Kara challenged, "we'd be dooming the entire galaxy to the same fate as the precursors." A long moment passed as Zhang visibly wrestled with his duty as a soldier and his conscience as a human being. Finally, he straightened, decision made. "We'll need a distraction. Something to keep both Commander Thorne and the incoming forces occupied while you work." Relief flooded through Kara. "The alien ship itself might provide one. Its systems are still partially active. If we could trigger some kind of automated response—" "Leave that to me," Zhang said, his tactical mind already formulating a plan. "You focus on decoding that transmission. We'll meet at Communication Array Alpha in 30 minutes. As they parted ways, Kara felt both the weight of responsibility and the lightness of certainty. For the first time since detecting the ghost transmission, she knew exactly what needed to be done. The knowledge might cost her her career, perhaps even her life, but the alternative was unthinkable. The fate of two empires and potentially all of civilization now rested on her ability to silence a ghost that had been crying out across the stars for centuries. Erebus 9's Communication Array Alpha was housed in a dome-like structure at the station's uppermost level, providing an unobstructed view of space in all directions. Under normal circumstances, access was restricted to senior communications officers and technical staff. But the approaching conflict had drawn security away from all but the most critical areas, leaving the array temporarily vulnerable. Kara arrived first, using her scientific clearance to bypass the outer security protocols. Inside, the array's massive dish pointed toward the endless expanse of stars, ready to receive or transmit signals across vast interstellar distances. She moved quickly to the main control console, connecting her datapad and beginning the complex process of reconfiguring the system to interface with the alien technology. The station shuddered suddenly, nearly throwing her off balance. Through the dome's transparent ceiling, she could see the first of the Steel Empire warships emerging from hyperspace, its sleek, predatory design unmistakable against the backdrop of stars. Its weapon systems were already charging glowing points of light along its hull, promising destruction. "They're early," Zhang's voice came from behind her as he entered the array control room, slightly out of breath. "Alliance Special Forces won't be here for another 10 minutes. We're on our own." "Did you manage to set up the distraction?" Kara asked, her fingers continuing to dance across the console, even as her eyes tracked the approaching warship. Zhang nodded grimly. "I programmed a series of power fluctuations in the alien vessel's engines. Should look like it's preparing to launch, which will occupy both our forces and theirs." He moved to stand beside her, watching her work. "How's the decoding coming?" "I've isolated the primary command structure of the ghost transmission," Kara explained, pulling up a series of complex equations on the screen. It's unlike anything in our databases, but there's a mathematical elegance to it that follows certain universal principles. Another tremor ran through the station, stronger this time. Alarms began to sound throughout the complex. "That's not from my distraction," Zhang said, checking the external sensors. "The Empire ship just fired a warning shot across our bow. They're demanding we surrender the alien vessel immediately." "They'll have to wait," Kara muttered, her focus unwavering. On her screen, the Ghost transmission's code began to untangle itself, revealing layers of embedded commands. One sequence in particular caught her attention, a repeating pattern that appeared to serve as a deactivation protocol for the ship's systems. "I think I've found it," she announced, highlighting the sequence. "A kill switch built into the transmission itself. The precursors must have included it as a failsafe." "Can you trigger it remotely?" Zhang asked, dividing his attention between her work and the tactical situation unfolding outside. Kara nodded slowly. "I think so, but there's a complication. The kill switch doesn't just deactivate the weapons data, it initiates a complete system purge. The alien ship, all its knowledge, would be lost forever," Zhang finished for her. "All that scientific discovery gone." "Yes." Kara's voice was heavy with the weight of what they were considering. "Knowledge that could advance our understanding of physics, of interstellar travel, of our own history. We'd be destroying the equivalent of 1,000 years of scientific progress." Zhang was quiet for a moment, considering. "But we'd also be destroying the equivalent of 1,000 years of warfare, of weapons that could end all life as we know it." Before Kara could respond, the entire station rocked violently, throwing them both against the console. The lights flickered, then stabilized as backup systems engaged. "Direct hit," Zhang shouted, pulling himself upright and checking the external feeds. "The Empire ship is moving into position for another attack." "What about the Alliance forces?" Kara asked, steadying herself as she returned to her work. "Still 8 minutes out," Zhang reported grimly. "They won't make it in time." Another impact even more powerful than the first. Sections of the station began reporting hull breaches and life support failures. Emergency bulkheads slammed into place, isolating the damaged areas. "We're out of time," Zhang said, his decision made. "Trigger the kill switch, Doctor, before it's too late." Kara's hands hovered over the console, the weight of galaxies on her shoulders. With a deep breath, she entered the final command sequence, redirecting the Ghost transmission back to its source, with the deactivation protocol embedded within it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, through the domed ceiling, they watched as the alien ship began to pulse with a brilliant, otherworldly light. The patterns on its hull shifted faster and faster, becoming a blur of illumination that spread outward like ripples in a pond. "Is it working?" Zhang asked, shielding his eyes from the increasing brightness. "I think so," Kara replied, watching her console as the Ghost transmission began to degrade its complex patterns, unraveling. "The cube is responding to the kill command." The alien ship's glow intensified, becoming almost painful to look at. Suddenly, all of Erebus 9's systems flickered simultaneously. Lights, life support, artificial gravity. Everything momentarily suspended between function and failure. "What's happening?" Zhang demanded, grabbing onto the console as the artificial gravity fluctuated, nearly sending them floating toward the ceiling. "The kill switch," Kara realized with dawning horror. "It's not just affecting the alien ship. It's triggering a cascade failure in our own systems." She frantically tried to sever the connection between the communication array and the Ghost transmission, but it was too late. The protocol had embedded itself throughout Erebus 9's network. Outside, the alien ship's glow reached its zenith, then began to fade the patterns on its hull, slowing and dimming until they disappeared entirely. The cube at its heart, the repository of all that ancient knowledge and terrible power, went dark. But the damage to Erebus 9 had already been done. Throughout the station, critical systems began to fail, one after another. The reactor core destabilized emergency protocols, unable to contain the growing imbalance. "We need to evacuate," Zhang shouted over the wailing alarms. "The station can't survive this level of system failure." Kara nodded numbly. The reality of what they had done, of what she had done, finally sinking in. The ghost transmission was gone, its ancient warning silenced at last. But the cost. They made their way through the chaos-filled corridors, helping injured personnel toward the escape pods. Both the Steel Empire warships and the newly arrived Alliance Special Forces vessels had ceased their hostilities. Their attention turned instead to rescuing survivors from the failing station. As Kara and Zhang reached the escape pod bay, Commander Thorne intercepted them, her uniform torn and bloodied from a head wound. "You," she said, recognizing Kara instantly. "You did this." "I prevented a weapon of mass destruction from falling into anyone's hands," Kara replied, standing her ground despite the tremors running through the station. "I saved millions of lives." "You committed treason," Thorne spat, though her words lacked conviction. In her eyes, Kara could see the conflicted understanding of someone who recognized the necessary evil that had been done. "Then arrest me," Kara challenged, "if we survive this." Another explosion rocked the station, more violent than any before. The lights failed, completely plunging them into darkness, until emergency illumination sputtered to life. Reactor containment at critical levels. The station's AI announced its usually calm voice distorted by static. "Catastrophic failure imminent. All personnel must evacuate immediately." Thorne's expression hardened with decision. "Get to an escape pod, both of you. This isn't over." As they crowded into one of the last functioning escape pods, Kara caught a final glimpse of Erebus 9 through the viewport. The once proud research station was coming apart at the seam sections, tearing away from the main structure as internal explosions ripped through its framework. The alien ship, still docked at Airlock 7, remained intact, but dormant, its purpose fulfilled. The escape pod launched with a violent jerk, accelerating away from the doomed station. Behind them, Erebus 9's reactor finally breached containment, the resulting explosion illuminating space for thousands of kilometers in every direction. The shockwave caught their small vessel, sending it tumbling end over end through the void. As Kara held on for her life, surrounded by the frightened faces of her fellow survivors, she couldn't help but think of the precursors, how they, too, must have witnessed the destruction of their achievements, their legacy reduced to a warning ghost, flickering across the stars. Whether they had succeeded in preventing history from repeating itself, only time would tell. The escape pod tumbled through space, its stabilizers, struggling to compensate for the violent shockwave from Erebus 9's destruction. Inside, the survivors were thrown against their restraints, bruised and disoriented, but alive. Lieutenant Zhang managed to gain control of the navigation system, directing their small vessel toward the barren surface of Saren below. Re-entry was rough, the pod's heat shields barely adequate for the planet's thin atmosphere. They landed hard on a vast plain of rusty dust, the impact throwing everyone forward before the inertial dampeners could fully engage. Silence fell over the cramped interior, broken only by the soft hiss of equalizing pressure and the occasional groan of pain from the injured. Kara unbuckled her restraints, her hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline began to fade. "Everyone all right?" Zhang asked, checking the pod systems. "Life support is stable, but communications are down. We can't contact the other pods or any ships in orbit." "How long until someone finds us?" one of the junior scientists asked, fear evident in her voice. Zhang's expression was carefully neutral. "Both Alliance and Empire vessels were in the area. Someone will come looking eventually." "And then what?" Commander Thorne demanded, pressing a makeshift bandage against her head wound. "What happens when they learn what you two did?" The accusation hung in the air, heavy with implications. Kara met Thorne's gaze steadily. "We prevented a catastrophe far worse than the loss of a single research station." "You destroyed invaluable scientific data," Thorne countered, though her argument lacked conviction. "Technology that could have advanced our understanding by centuries. Technology that neither the Alliance nor the Empire could be trusted with." Zhang interjected, surprising everyone with his open defense of their actions. You saw the simulations, Commander. You know what that weapon was capable of. Thorne fell silent, her eyes reflecting the inner conflict of a career military officer forced to question orders from above. Finally, she nodded a barely perceptible movement. What's done is done. Our priority now is survival until rescue arrives. The group focused on taking inventory of their supplies and treating the injured as best they could with the pod's limited medical kit. Outside, Saren's brutal landscape stretched to the horizon, a rust-colored wasteland beneath a pale, distant sun. Hours passed with no sign of rescue. The pod's internal temperature began to drop as night fell across the planet's surface, the thin atmosphere providing little insulation against the cold of space. The survivors huddled together for warmth, conversation dwindling to whispers and eventually silence. Kara found herself seated beside Zhang, both of them staring out the viewport at the alien stars overhead. The destruction of Erebus 9 had been visible even from the planet's surface, a brief, brilliant flash that momentarily outshone everything else in the sky. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked softly, the question that had been haunting her since they had activated the kill switch. Zhang was quiet for a long moment, his breath fogging in the increasingly cold air. "I've been a soldier for 20 years, Doctor. I've followed orders that resulted in death and destruction because I believed in the cause I was fighting for. But this," he gestured vaguely toward the sky. "This was different. This wasn't about the Alliance versus the Empire. It was about survival, all of us together." "The precursors thought they could control it too," Kara murmured. "Their hubris destroyed them." "And would have destroyed us," Zhang finished. "Yes, I think we did the right thing. The only thing we could have done." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft beeping from the pod's communication system. Zhang moved quickly to the console, adjusting frequencies and power levels. "It's a transmission," he announced, his voice tight with concentration. "But it's not coming from orbit. It's originating somewhere on the surface." Kara joined him at the console, her scientific curiosity overriding exhaustion. "That's impossible. Saren is uninhabited." "Tell that to whoever's broadcasting," Zhang replied, trying to clean up the signal. Gradually, through layers of static, a pattern emerged, one Kara recognized immediately. "The ghost transmission," she whispered, disbelief coloring her voice. "But how we destroyed the cube." "Maybe not," Zhang theorized, his tactical mind quickly assessing possibilities. "Maybe the kill switch didn't destroy the data, just dispersed it, scattered it across multiple systems." Commander Thorne had awakened and moved to join them, her face pale in the pod's dim emergency lighting. "If that's true, the weapon's schematics could still be reconstructed." "Not just the weapon," Kara realized, her mind racing ahead. "The entire history of the precursors. Their science, their culture, their warnings." She turned to Zhang, a new determination setting in. "We need to find the source of that transmission. In case you haven't noticed, Doctor, we're stranded on a hostile planet with limited supplies and no way to contact help," Thorne pointed out. "Finding mysterious alien signals isn't exactly a priority." "It should be," Kara insisted. "What if the Empire or Alliance finds it first? We'd be right back where we started." Zhang studied the signal's data, his expression thoughtful. "According to these readings, the source isn't far. Maybe 10 kilometers west of our position." "That's a death sentence in this environment," Thorne objected. "Night temperatures on Saren drop well below freezing, and the pod's environmental suits weren't designed for extended surface excursions." "Then, we'll wait until morning." Kara decided, her tone brooking no argument. "But we need to find that transmission source before anyone else does." As dawn broke over Saren's desolate landscape, bathing the rusty plains in pale orange light, Kara and Zhang prepared for their expedition. The pod's supplies had yielded enough survival gear for a day's journey, environmental suits modified to withstand the planet's harsh conditions, emergency rations, and a portable scanner calibrated to track the ghost transmission's unique frequency. Commander Thorne had reluctantly agreed to their plan, though she insisted on maintaining communication every 30 minutes. "If you miss a check-in, I'm assuming you're dead and focusing on our survival, not yours," she had warned them. The surface of Saren was even more inhospitable than it had appeared from orbit. Jagged rock formations erupted from the rusty soil, their edges honed by centuries of abrasive wind. The thin atmosphere made breathing difficult, even with the suit's supplemental oxygen, and the low gravity created a disorienting bouncing gait that slowed their progress. "The signal's growing stronger," Kara reported, after they had been walking for nearly 3 hours. "We must be getting close." Zhang nodded, conserving his oxygen by speaking only when necessary. They crested a ridge of wind-sculpted stone, and both stopped short at the sight that greeted them. Below, nestled in a natural amphitheater of rock, stood a structure that clearly didn't belong on this primitive world. Unlike the organic curves of the alien ship that had docked with Erebus 9, this building was angular precise, almost crystalline in its geometric perfection. Its surface reflected the sunlight in iridescent patterns, creating a beacon visible for kilometers in every direction. A precursor outpost. Kara breathed her scientific enthusiasm, momentarily overriding caution. "It must have been here for thousands of years, dormant until now. Until we triggered the kill switch," Zhang theorized. "Like a backup system activating after the primary fails." They made their way down the slope toward the structure, each step raising small clouds of dust that hung in the thin air, before settling slowly back to the surface. As they approached a section of the building's wall, seemed to dissolve, creating an entrance just large enough for them to pass through. "It's inviting us in," Kara observed, unable to keep the wonder from her voice. Zhang's hand moved instinctively to where his sidearm would normally be, but Thorn had confiscated all weapons before allowing them to leave. "Or it's drawing us into a trap." Kara considered this possibility, then shook her head. "The precursors went to extraordinary lengths to warn other species about their mistake. I don't think they'd set traps for those who received their message. Unless they decided the only way to prevent the weapon's recreation was to eliminate anyone who discovered it," Zhang countered grimly. Despite his reservations, they both knew they had no choice but to enter. Whatever secrets the structure held, they couldn't risk them falling into the wrong hands. The interior of the outpost was a single, vast chamber, its walls lined with technology similar to what they had found aboard the alien ship. At the center stood a crystalline formation that pulsed with internal light, its facets reflecting and refracting to create holographic displays throughout the room. "It's beautiful," Kara whispered, her voice hushed with reverence. As if responding to her presence, the crystal's pulsing intensified, and the holographic displays coalesced into a single image, a figure humanoid, but clearly alien, with elongated limbs and a head that featured multiple sensory organs, where humans would have eyes and ears. "A precursor," Zhang realized aloud. The figure began to speak, its voice resonating through their suit communications, despite there being no discernible sound in the airless chamber. The language was unlike anything Kara had ever heard, complex harmonics layered with mathematical precision. Yet somehow she understood. Not the words themselves, but their meaning, as if the message was bypassing language entirely and connecting directly with her mind. "We were the first," the figure seemed to say, though the translation felt imperfect, approximated. "The first to reach beyond our world, to touch the stars, to bend space and time to our will. We created wonders beyond imagining, and in our pride, we created our own destruction." The hologram shifted, showing scenes of a vast civilization, cities that spanned entire continents, vessels that traveled between stars in the blink of an eye, beings that had conquered death itself through technology. "We discovered the key that unlocks the heart of stars," the narration continued. "We thought ourselves wise enough, disciplined enough to wield such power. We were wrong." The images changed again, now showing conflict factions, fighting for control of the weapon stars, collapsing into themselves, before exploding outward with unnatural force, entire worlds reduced to ash in an instant. The weapon cannot be controlled. The figure insisted its projected emotion, one of desperate urgency. Its power corrupts absolutely. Those who seek it do not understand that it is not a tool, but a sentence of death for all. Kara glanced at Zhang, seeing her own growing dread reflected in his eyes. The precursor's warning only confirmed what they had already suspected, what they had risked everything to prevent. The hologram continued describing how the surviving precursors had sent ships throughout the galaxy, each carrying a record of their civilization and a warning about the weapon they had created. They had established outposts on primitive worlds, programmed to activate only if the primary warning failed. Those who find this message have already encountered our ship, the figure explained. You have already faced the choice we once faced. If you are here, you have chosen wisdom over power. For this we thank you. The crystal at the center of the chamber began to pulse more rapidly, its light spreading outward to encompass the entire structure. What's happening? Zhang asked, tensing, as the floor beneath them vibrated with increasing intensity. I think it's fulfilling its purpose, Kara replied, understanding dawning. The outpost was never meant to last. Once its message was delivered, it was programmed to self-destruct, ensuring the knowledge it contained could never be misused. Then we need to leave now, Zhang insisted, pulling her toward the entrance. But Kara hesitated, her scientific instincts warring with the practical need for survival. Wait. If this is the only remaining record of the precursors, shouldn't we preserve it for the advancement of science? Weren't you listening? Zhang demanded. The precursors destroyed themselves because they couldn't resist the temptation of their own knowledge. Do you think humanity would do any better? The vibration intensified, small particles of dust and crystal, beginning to float in the low gravity as the structure prepared to tear itself apart. The holographic precursor spoke one final time, its message simple but profound. Choose life, it said. Choose wisdom. Choose a future without our mistakes. Kara stared at the fading image, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. With a deep breath, she nodded to Zhang. You're right. Let's go. They barely made it out of the structure before it began to collapse, not violently, but with a strange, almost beautiful precision, folding in on itself like an elaborate puzzle being solved in reverse. Within minutes, where the crystalline outpost had stood, there was nothing but a shallow depression in the rusty soil of Saren. As they watched the last traces of the precursor technology disappear, Kara felt a strange mixture of loss and relief. It's over, she murmured. Really over this time. Zhang nodded, scanning the horizon as their suit communications crackled to life with Commander Thorne's voice. Zhang Voss, report your status immediately, she demanded, concern barely masked by military formality. We're alive, Zhang responded. The transmission source has been neutralized. We're heading back to the pod. Accelerate your return, Thorne ordered. We're picking up multiple ships entering orbit, both Alliance and Empire signatures. As they began the long trek back across Saren's inhospitable surface, Kara looked up at the sky, imagining the vessels converging on the planet. Ships filled with soldiers and scientists, all seeking the power that had just been permanently erased from existence. What happens now? She asked Zhang, the question encompassing far more than just their immediate future. Now. He repeated, something like hope in his voice, for the first time since the crisis began. Now the real work starts. The Light Alliance and the Steel Empire just lost their research station, and the weapon they were both willing to start a war over. Their credibility with their own citizens and allied worlds will be severely damaged. Creating a power vacuum, Kara realized. Creating an opportunity, Zhang corrected. For something better. Something that doesn't rely on mutually assured destruction to maintain peace. As they walked, Kara found herself thinking about the precursors, how they had risen to the heights of technological achievement, only to fall victim to their own hubris. Yet, in their fall, they had left behind a warning that might just save those who came after them. The ghost transmission had flickered across thousands of years, carrying both terrible knowledge and profound wisdom. It had shown them what docked could leave empires in ruins, not just a weapon of unimaginable power, but the very idea that power alone could solve the problems of civilizations. By the time they reached the escape pod, the first ships were landing on Saren's surface. Alliance and Empire vessels, their weapons primed, but unfired, each keeping a wary distance from the other. Neither side knew yet that the prize they sought was gone forever, destroyed by the same failsafe that had been programmed millennia ago by beings who had learned the hardest lesson any civilization could face. As representatives from both powers approached the pod demanding answers and making claims to sovereignty over the planet, Kara exchanged a glance with Zhang. They alone knew the truth, that the greatest gift the precursors had left behind wasn't a weapon or even knowledge, but the absence of both. A second chance for humanity to find a different path forward. "Ready?" Zhang asked quietly, as the officials drew nearer, their faces stern beneath the clear visors of their environmental suits. Kara nodded, thinking of the vast cycles of rise and fall of empires and civilizations, and of the lessons that seemed doomed to be learned and forgotten and learned again. Ready. Together, they stepped out to meet the future, a future that, thanks to a ghost transmission from the distant past, might now have a chance to unfold differently than before. In the days and weeks that followed, the repercussions of Erebus IX's destruction rippled throughout the galaxy. As Lieutenant Zhang had predicted, both the Light Alliance and the Steel Empire suffered severe political consequences. Allied worlds, disturbed by the willingness of both powers to risk war over unknown alien technology, began to distance themselves, declaring neutrality or forming independent coalitions. The official investigation into the research station's destruction produced conflicting reports, with each side blaming the other for the catastrophe. Kara and Zhang, along with the other survivors, were debriefed extensively, the truth of their actions buried beneath layers of classified information and political expediency. Neither empire was willing to admit they had been pursuing a weapon of mass destruction, nor that two rogue officers had prevented them from acquiring it. Released from military custody, but effectively blacklisted from returning to their previous positions, Kara and Zhang found themselves adrift in a galaxy undergoing rapid political realignment. The power vacuum created by the weakening of the two major empires had opened space for new voices, new approaches to governance and cooperation. 6 months after the events on Saren, they sat together in a small observation lounge aboard a civilian transport vessel, bound for the outer reaches. Through the viewport, stars streaked past as the ship traveled at sub-light speed, the hyperspace engines powered down for routine maintenance. "Have you seen the latest reports from the core worlds?" Zhang asked, passing Kara a datapad. She scrolled through the news, a small smile forming as she read. The Treaty of New Beginnings. Both the Alliance and the Empire actually agreed to it. Along with 27 formerly non-aligned worlds, Zhang confirmed. Mutual disarmament, open scientific exchange, shared governance of disputed territories. It's not perfect, but it's a start. And all it took was the near destruction of two empires, Kara mused, handing back the datapad. I wonder what the precursors would think, knowing their warning actually worked this time. I think they'd be surprised, Zhang replied thoughtfully. Based on their message, it sounded like they'd tried many times before, always with the same result. Always with species choosing power over wisdom. Kara gazed out at the passing stars, considering this. Maybe we got lucky. Right place, right time, right people making decisions. Or maybe we learned something they couldn't, Zhang suggested. They were alone in their galaxy from what we could tell. No competing civilizations, no balance of power. We had the advantage of already knowing what conflict between empires looks like. Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement that the ship would be dropping out of hyperspace momentarily for the final approach to the outer reach station. As the starscape normalized outside the viewport, a massive structure came into view, a wheel-shaped habitat, rotating slowly against the backdrop of a nebula. Its spokes connecting to a central hub that glowed with concentrated energy. Home, sweet home, Kara said softly, still not quite believing that this would be their base for the foreseeable future. The Outer Reach Scientific Cooperative represented something new in the galaxy, an independent research facility, funded jointly by worlds from both former empires and non-aligned systems alike. Its charter explicitly prohibited weapons research, focusing instead on technologies that could benefit all species equally. When they had received the invitation to join Kara as a signal interpretation specialist, Zhang as head of security, they had accepted without hesitation. After what they had witnessed on Erebus 9, the opportunity to participate in truly collaborative research, free from Imperial oversight, had been irresistible. As they disembarked and made their way through the station's bustling central concourse, Kara marveled at the diversity around them. Scientists, engineers, and support staff from dozens of worlds moved purposefully through the space, their different physiologies and cultural markers, a testament to the cooperative's inclusive nature. Dr. Voss, Lieutenant Zhang, a voice called out, catching their attention. A tall figure approached its skin, an iridescent blue that shifted subtly with each movement. "Welcome to Outer Reach. I'm Director Naylan. We've been eagerly awaiting your arrival." After introductions and a brief tour of the main research facilities, the director led them to a secured laboratory deep within the station's scientific sector. Access required multiple biometric scans and security clearances, raising Kara's curiosity about what might be housed inside. "What we're about to show you is known to only a handful of individuals throughout the galaxy," Director Naylan explained, as the final door slid open. "Given your unique experience with precursor technology, the board felt you should be among them." Inside the lab, surrounded by the most advanced containment field Kara had ever seen, floated a small, crystalline fragment, similar in composition to the cube they had encountered on the alien ship. "Is that?" she began, unable to complete the question, as implications raced through her mind. "A piece of the precursor database, yes," the director confirmed. "Recovered from the debris field that was once Erebus 9, the only intact fragment ever found." Zhang tensed beside her, his hand instinctively moving toward a weapon he no longer carried. "That should have been destroyed." "And officially, it was," Naylan assured them. "As far as the Light Alliance, the Steel Empire, or any other power knows, all precursor technology was lost in the station's destruction. But this fragment survived, and rather than turning it over to authorities who might misuse it, the scientists who found it brought it here." "Why?" Kara asked, the single word encompassing a universe of questions. "Because the precursors were wrong about one thing," the director replied, moving to a console beside the containment field. "Knowledge itself isn't dangerous, only how it's applied. This fragment contains no weapon schematics, no stellar destabilizer plans. What it does contain is the cultural and philosophical history of a species that achieved technological wonders, then destroyed themselves with them." The director activated the console, and a holographic display appeared above the fragment, images of precursor art, architecture, musical notation, and what appeared to be religious or philosophical texts. In their final warning, they focused solely on the danger, not on everything else they had achieved, Naylan continued. "We believe there is much to learn from their non-military accomplishments. Advancements in medicine, environmental restoration, sustainable energy knowledge that could benefit all life in the galaxy." Kara approached the containment field, studying the fragment with a mixture of scientific curiosity and caution. "How can you be certain it contains no weapons data?" "We can't not with absolute certainty," the director admitted. "Which is why access is so restricted, and why we needed someone with your expertise. Your experience with the original transmission makes you uniquely qualified to help us navigate this knowledge safely." Zhang joined Kara at the containment field, his expression troubled. "We destroyed the original database to prevent exactly this kind of situation. What's to stop this fragment from becoming the focus of another power struggle?" "Us," Naylan replied simply. "The cooperative is founded on principles of transparency and shared benefit. No single government or corporation controls our work. Everything we discover is published openly, preventing any one entity from weaponizing it secretly. A noble idea, Zhang acknowledged, but history suggests it won't last. Perhaps not indefinitely, the director conceded. But long enough we hope to establish a new paradigm. To demonstrate that cooperation yields greater benefits than competition. Kara's attention had remained fixed on the holographic display, where images of precursor daily life now played out beings with families, communities, traditions. So alien in form, yet so familiar in substance. They were just like us, she murmured, a realization both humbling and troubling. Brilliant, flawed, capable of both creation and destruction. That's why their story matters, Nayland said. Not just as a warning about technology's dangers, but as a mirror for our own civilization. A chance to see where we might be headed and choose a different path. After the director left them alone with the fragment, Kara and Zhang stood in contemplative silence, the weight of decision heavy between them. We could destroy it, Zhang suggested quietly. Finish what we started on Erebus 9. Make sure the ghost transmission is silenced for good. Kara considered this her scientific training, warring with the caution she had learned through hard experience. Or we could learn from it. Take the wisdom without the weapon. Can those truly be separated? Zhang challenged. The precursors couldn't manage it. Maybe that's why we're here, Kara replied, meeting his gaze. Maybe that's the real test, not whether we can resist the temptation of power, but whether we can embrace knowledge without letting it corrupt us. Outside the lab's viewport, the great wheel of the Outer Reach station continued its slow rotation, a symbol of balance and stability amid the chaos of space. Somewhere out there, the remnants of two once mighty empires were rebuilding, hopefully wiser, for their near miss with mutual destruction. New alliances were forming, new possibilities emerging from the ruins of old orders. And here, in this secure laboratory, at the edge of known space, two individuals who had once silenced a ghost from the distant past now contemplated allowing it to speak again, not as a harbinger of destruction, but as a guide toward a better future. If we do this, Zhang said finally, we do it together. We watch each other for signs of the same hubris that doomed the precursors. Kara nodded, extending her hand to the man who had become both colleague and friend through the crucible of shared crisis. Together, she agreed, for whatever comes next. As they sealed their pact with a handshake, the crystalline fragment seemed to pulse once with inner light. Not the ghost transmission of before, but something new. Something perhaps that even the precursors themselves had never fully understood, the possibility that knowledge tempered by wisdom and shared rather than hoarded might lead not to ruin, but to redemption. In that moment, while empires continued to reshape themselves and new powers emerged from their ruins, a small but vital transmission flickered to life, not from the ancient past, but toward an uncertain future. A signal, not of warning, but of hope. The end.